Sky 7 over the scene of what police are now calling a double homicide.
For the first time, California Governor Gavin Newsom has publicly acknowledged that he is open to a run for the White House.
In LA, homelessness has jumped 16% in a year. Half of Americans living on the streets are in California.
Well, I dutifully tuned into the gubernatorial debate in California last night, April 22nd, 2026. And there were no real surprises. It was a showcase of the ineptitude of the left and the Democrat Party. And not a single one of the candidates on there were 4 Democrat candidates and 2 Republicans. And the Democrats had no solutions, which wasn't surprising. I guess one takeaway is that the Democrat field is it was weaker and even more pathetic than I even knew or imagined. Matt Mahan was a disaster in San Jose. San Jose is a disaster. But because California is so bad, even a terribly run city like San Jose, which Matt Mahan was the mayor of, somehow that makes him look good. So, that's what the Democrats are working with. And there was no consensus about who the best candidate would be. I mean, Matt Mahan certainly sounded like the least radical of the candidates, but that's not saying much again. He's still radical. But what I did take away was some nicknames for the Democrat candidates. We did learn a lot about them. Tom Steyer, he's the self-styled anti-billionaire billionaire. And he was asked a question at one point about being a billionaire, etc. What's stopping you from paying more taxes? You want to tax the rich. Why don't you do that? Well, it doesn't do anything if I'm the only one that, pays into it. That doesn't solve the problem. If one billionaire, we got to get I think that Tom Steyer is probably the worst candidate, Democrat candidate running, which again is saying something because they all are horrific. I think Tom Steyer is even worse than Becerra. There's just no self-awareness whatsoever with Tom Steyer. He's trying to be something that he's not. Donald Trump, in contrast, is a billionaire and owned it. He was proud of his success, but, Tom Steyer can't make up his mind because, of course, he made his billions in a capitalist system off of oil and gas, and now he runs against those things. But he made his money off of it, and now, of course, the reason he's positioned himself against oil and gas is because now he's got companies that make money off of the Green New Scam. So now he's, working the other angle. So he's just tone deaf. He's really cringe-inducing to watch him try and do this, to go in these communities. The guy's totally out of touch. He can't relate to anybody. And he is one of the most radical candidates on there. His whole shtick is, I'm the most progressive candidate. I'm the most progressive candidate. We're the most progressive state, which is why this state sucks so bad. And he's trying to run further left than Gavin Newsom's reign of terror over the last, 2 terms. So he's the self-styled anti-billionaire. Katie Porter, she's the climate alarmist, I'm calling her. She was asked about, should we cut the gas tax? They're all asked that. And, she launched into a climate sermon saying, we don't breathe clean air. So that's Katie Porter. And then Matt Mahan. And by the way, Katie Porter is proud to be poor. That's kind of her shtick as well. If you have Tom Steyer, who's the self-professed anti-billionaire billionaire, Katie Porter's the I'm poor and proud of it kind of thing. Matt Mahan, he's the San Jose, used car salesman, the San Jose success salesman. Every time he's asked a question, it's about his record in San Jose. Look, San Jose is the model for California. So imagine if San Jose was the model for the country. Woo, we'd be in bad shape. But again, it's California. So he's the San Jose guy. I've got San Jose mayoral experience. Look how wonderful San Jose is. I can do the same for California. No, thanks. I don't live in San Jose for a reason, Matt. Then you got Xavier Becerra. He's the experience candidate. And every time he was asked a question, he talked about how he has experience. You know, he'd say things like, well, Steve Hilton's never run the government before. He's never worked for the government. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's why we elected Trump, too. You know, he hadn't worked in the government. That's what we wanted, an outsider. So, you know, it's funny, the lack of, again, self-awareness. Becerra's running like him being the establishment, you know, Sacramento swamp creature, that's something to be proud of. And I don't think these people, any of them, can really read the room. I mean, Californians are fed up with this stuff. And, you know, all we got from the Democrat candidates, to one degree or another, it was just a script of blame, you know, calls for more subsidies, more government expansion. It was clear the divide, because the two candidates, obviously the Republicans, both Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton, they made it clear that government was the problem. And on the other side, with all four of the Democrats, it was clear that they believe that government is the solution. And in most cases, they refused to acknowledge that the government was responsible for any of the problems in this state. And if they did acknowledge it was a problem, they had no solution except the same failed solution. But on the gas tax, Tom Steyer, you know, he blamed the war in Iran. Incredible. Prices have always been above the national average in California because of the regulatory policies, refineries that have left, the fact that we don't even use our own oil in the state. We ship it in from, you know, the Middle East. And, you know, Steve Hilton did a good job of pointing that out. But he blamed the war in Iran, which is just like offensive, insulting to someone's intelligence. Katie Porter, again, climate sermon. Matt Mahan was the only one that acknowledged that the gas tax is regressive. He said he would suspend it, because that's what they were all asked. Would you suspend the gas tax to give relief to California families? And Matt Mahan, you know, he to his credit, said, yeah, he would suspend it. But then he pivoted. He couldn't get out of his leftism. He pivoted to this class warfare theme about making corporations and, you know, the wealthy bear more of the burden on that. They talked about this electric vehicle mileage tax as well. You know, Xavier Becerra, he fixated on potholes. You know, I mean, people don't want to run over potholes in this state. We can't cut the gas tax. And then he blamed Donald Trump. This was Becerra also. Becerra was the quintessential. I mean, he blamed Trump every time. I mean, they all did to some degree as well. But Becerra, every time he was asked a question, it had nothing to do with Trump. He had to say something about, you know, it being Donald Trump's fault. You know, they all try to position themselves as the anti-Trump candidates. And by the way, you know, Trump's going to be out of office, and you're serving a 4-year term as governor, so Trump's not going to be in office. So, you know, what are you running against for that section of time too? It's just so crazy. But Becerra also mistakenly cited the war in Iraq instead of Iran. He said Iraq, but he offered no actual solution. He fell back on his experience. So, you know, only Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton spoke plainly to working Californians. They both pointed out the truth that the regulatory policies have crippled the oil and auto industries, and they pointed out the fraud. You know, the money that we're paying for the gas tax anyway, there's no visible signs of it helping the California residents anyway. Why don't we deal with the fraud? And no Democrat had anything to say about the fraud in the state or solving that. You know, I think it was Chad Bianco that nailed the core problem, that said that Sacramento doesn't have a revenue shortage. It has a reckless spending addiction. And so, you know, this defined every single issue on homelessness. I mean, it was unbelievable that they asked him to grade Gavin Newsom on his job with homelessness. And obviously, despite spending, you know, more than $20 billion since 2019 to solve homelessness, we have more homelessness today than we did when Gavin Newsom came into office, 180,000 people. You know, Mahan, you know, cited his San Jose model, the San Jose salesman. Porter gave a B and hilariously called herself a notoriously hard grader. It's just a housing problem, she kept saying. People are homeless just because there aren't enough houses out. That's not why they're homeless. They can't even diagnose the root cause. It reminds me of Kamala Harris going down to the border what's the root cause of the open border? I don't know. The open no, no, no. We got to figure it out. It's because other places, it's climate change or something that's forcing them here. That's the root cause of what? And so Katie Porter can't figure it out either, that it's drugs, other policies. People can't read and write in the state. People don't have opportunities. So that leads to homelessness. It's not because there aren't enough houses, although we do need houses. But there was another shocking moment where they were showed a video of this CHP, California Highway Patrol person that was giving the English proficiency test to somebody who on the side of a road. And obviously the individual, the man in the video, couldn't speak English, couldn't identify the signs. And every Democrat, seemed to suggest effectively, I mean, they basically don't care. They don't care. I mean, they're the open border crowd. They don't think that speaking English is relevant to, sustaining a sovereign country and obviously, a state that's part of that. But it was just amazing. The clear consensus again, the Democrats, their solutions, more regulation, more subsidies, more taxes on the wealthy, more government intervention. That's the answer to every challenge. Steyer positions himself as the change agent, while dodging how much more he should pay in taxes. And again, that was just so incredible. That was just incredible. No. I mean, what's stopping you from giving your money, your bill? Well, my wife and I have talked about this. We're going to give all our billions away one day. Okay, but yeah, you say you're going to tax the billionaires. So what's stopping you from donating to, Sacramento, putting the fund? Well, I mean, that's not going to change anything. Okay. But Becerra was kind of the most. I don't know. It was kind of a toss-up between Tom Steyer and Becerra because Becerra repeatedly boasted about his experience fighting crises. But it ranks so hollow because anybody who knows Becerra's history knows that as California Attorney General, he targeted pro-life activists and pregnancy centers. He spent his whole tenure as AG just trying to fight the Trump administration, weaponizing, his position. And then as HHS secretary under Biden, I mean, he lost contact with over 85,000 unaccompanied migrant children. He was invisible during the COVID response, during monkeypox. And of course, his own chief of staff looted his dormant campaign fund to the tune of $225,000. And he said, it was outside of my vision. Everything's outside of this guy's vision. So this guy's the experienced guy, but his experience shows that he's not qualified. So, I watched that debate, and it's clear that after 16 years of one-party rule, it's time for change. It wasn't evident before. It was certainly evident after. And the Democrats offered no solutions. And the choice is really clear for Californians, I think. I mean, in the June top two primary, you can double down on the familiar path of excuses, of endless subsidies and green virtue signaling, or you consider the alternative, which is something different: spending discipline, regulatory restraint, common sense, honest accountability to results. And that would certainly deliver a better outcome. So Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton were both impressive. They were the only voices on stage that were willing to name the issues we face and clearly articulate the problems, which is Democrats in Sacramento, and also to articulate solutions, which they did really well. So, Californians, we've all lived through the consequences of this 16-year hell under Democrat rule. So now we get to decide whether fantasy or reality is going to guide the state's next chapter. And that's what we saw on stage. We saw fantasy land with the Democrats and then reality with Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton. So Californians have a chance to think different. They have a chance to vote different. It's a really unique opportunity. And if we squander it, things are going to get even worse, if you can believe it or not, in California. So, but the cycle of failure doesn't need to be permanent. This is Drew Allen with the Daily Signal. Thank you.